Hello, we are the Berkshire Violence Prevention Center. My name is Carly. I use they, them pronouns.
And I'm Jenny. I use she, her pronouns.
Today we're going to be talking about gender identity and everything that entails. I think that maybe a good place to start is what is gender identity even?
Great place to start.
So we have kind of a list of terms that we're going to share with you to help you on your journey. The first being gender identity, which is really up to each individual to decide for themselves. But gender identity is really a deeply personal feeling of whether a person identifies as a man or a woman, non-binary, or some other gender identity. There's also a term called gender expression, which is how they show that identity to the world. So while I may have been assigned female at birth, I identify as non-binary, and my expression tends to be, I don't know, some folks might call it like a tomboy look, or, you know, just kind of very casual, somewhere in between male and female clothing style.
So the sex assigned at birth, how would you describe that versus your sexuality?
Oh, good question, Jenny. So your sex assigned at birth. Sex assigned at birth is basically when a child is born, they have genitalia, and the doctor will look at their genitalia and decide if they are male or female or intersex. Intersex just means that that person's chromosomes, hormones, genitals, etc., their sex characteristics, they're not strictly male or female. Whereas sexual orientation or sexuality is somebody's physical, emotional, romantic attraction to another gender.
Great.
Or multiple genders. Also, we have cisgender and transgender. So these are terms that come up a lot, I think, that especially on social media. And for a lot of people, these are new terms. So cisgender basically means that your sex assigned at birth matches your gender identity in the way that you present to the world. So transgender basically means any person whose gender identity or expression does not fit what society expects from them based on their sex assigned at birth. So if I'm assigned female at birth and I like to wear men's clothing, I could be considered transgender. It's an umbrella term, most often used for folks who want to transition either physically or medically away from their assigned gender at birth. But it is a very broad umbrella. We also have, as I mentioned before, non-binary or gender non-conforming. Those are folks who fall either in between masculine and feminine genders or outside of them. There's quite a range of identities there. And then we have the term misgendering, which, again, you may have heard if you're on social media. Misgendering is simply when someone uses the wrong pronouns, name, or identity for a person. For example, Jenny said her pronouns are she, her. So if I use he, him pronouns when I refer to Jenny, I would be misgendering her. And that's not okay.
Great. So these terms are, these definitions can be a little confusing, especially because we see these same words repeated over and over again: gender, gender identity, gender expression, gender nonconforming. But the idea here is that I think the main ideas are that you have the sex assigned at birth, and from there you have a lot of freedom to deviate from that label that you're given. So your gender identity can be completely different from whatever sex you were assigned at birth. And then your gender expression is also slightly separate from your gender identity. You can identify as female and still dress very tomboyish. Like there's really not a lot of rules here. Every person is given the freedom to express both their sexuality and their gender in the way that feels unique and personal to them. And it's important because to take that away from people is to take away who they are. And so, as far as misgendering goes, I think that the offense to misgendering people is you're taking something away from them. It's like if I introduce myself as Jenny and you continue to call me by another name, it's like I told you my name's Jenny. Like it's,
Exactly. And I think that a lot goes into that. Something that I learned recently when in doubt or when confused feeling confused by all these, trust the person, right? Each individual knows themselves better than anyone else. So if you tell me you're Jenny, I should just trust that you're Jenny. Like, that's simple enough. And there are folks out there who don't want to label themselves at all. They don't want any pronouns in labels, and that can be tricky too. So if you don't use she, her, like, what do I call you? And oftentimes just Jenny, right? I just can use your name in that situation.
We do have a little bit of advice on how to get used to the proper use of pronouns. And a lot of that is a lot of this is new for us, so new for a lot of people. So there shouldn't be a lot of shame if you misgender somebody. If your heart is in the right place, then it's okay. Like, let's just move, moving forward. So we have some little scripts, some advice on how to move forward if you accidentally misgender somebody.
Exactly. Yeah. So we all make mistakes. And I think that the best advice is when you make a mistake, whether it's a name or a pronoun, is to apologize and move on. Correct yourself and just move swiftly forward. Because a lot of times when we over apologize, it's more about how we're feeling than about the other person's feelings. We want that person to tell us, it's okay. But really that's putting a lot on them when they're not the one that made the mistake, right? So if I say, hey, James, oh, whoops, I'm sorry. I mean, Jenny.
Yeah, making your mistake into a burden for the other person is just kind of compounding the issue here. So if you misgender someone, just saying, oh, I'm sorry, thank you for sharing your authentic self with me. I'm learning, and I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you sharing yourself with me. Instead of, I'm so sorry. If you get nervous and make it about you, make this other person's pronoun preference about you, it's not helping the situation.
Also, you have to imagine that when someone has new pronouns that they're using, they're going to be correcting people a lot in their life, and they're going to be coming out to people a lot, and they're going to have to do this work a lot. So if you can be a good ally and correct folks when you hear them using the wrong name or the wrong pronoun, even when that person isn't in the room, it's important that we're using their name correctly and that we're using their pronouns and that we're correcting our friends and family members when they misgender someone. And again, it doesn't have to be a huge dramatic scene. It can just be as simple as, hey, they go by the name Jax now. Jax uses he, him pronouns. Keep it simple. Keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. I think especially if it's somebody who transitions, who maybe you've known growing up, you've known them your whole life, it can make it a little bit more tricky because in your head, you've just kind of crystallized the idea that they are a boy or a girl. So you can consider meeting up with somebody to practice, maybe getting coffee with a mutual friend and correcting one another until you get it. That's practice is key here. Using these vocabularies that are new to a lot of us.
Yeah, I think that it's the idea of meeting up with a friend at a coffee shop or at your home, wherever you're comfortable, and just like talking about this person and their new pronouns is totally a fantastic way to do the work outside of like doing it directly in front of the person. Like sometimes. Mm-hmm. Also, you might feel a little less awkward about making those mistakes, right? Like, I want to get it right. Yeah. I care about this person. I want to get it right. I don't want them to see me fumbling all the time. So maybe I'll fumble in front of another trusted friend who's also fumbling. We can fumble together and we can get through this, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. But once again, just like not making it a burden for this person who is exploring their identity and sharing something very deep and vulnerable with you.
Yeah. Yeah, sharing who they are. And it's okay to talk about these things, even if we're not completely comfortable with these things, because how will we all ever collectively be, kind of get everything? How will we ever collectively be able to appreciate and the wide, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, I get what you mean. how can we, like, as a society, as a culture, fully embrace identities that are new to us if we don't talk about it, if we don't put it out there and keep practicing these skills, right? It's not going to be instant. I learned about what the word transgender meant when I was in high school, and it like threw me for a loop. You know, it took me, I'm 33 now, so like that was 15, 20 years ago. That's a long time to be practicing these skills. So I'm more comfortable with them than someone who's just learning today. It's going to take you time. Mm-hmm. And everything we're talking about is fluid, meaning that this vocabulary is evolving and changing. Folks are finding what feels right to them. And it's just constantly changing. I still can't find a gender neutral term for an aunt or an uncle. That's like one that isn't out there yet. So if anyone knows one, leave it in the comments and let us know what you would call your gender neutral aunt or uncle.
Wow, I've never even thought of that.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And although a lot of these terms are new, a lot of the expressions that are underneath them, I don't think are new. I think the experience of being non-binary definitely precedes or came before the creation of all these terms. So although the terms are really important, I think that what's most important is allowing people to be an expression of who they feel that they are in that moment. And knowing that these labels are not meant to define us, but these labels are used to give us a sense of belonging, so that we can find other people who have had similar experiences with us and who can support us in our experiences.
Exactly. These labels that we're sharing with you are tools, right? So they're tools that describe behavior or describe, a feeling. Just like Jenny said, we can use these tools to help us connect with a greater community and to learn about each other. We should never feel forced into any sort of label or box. We should never feel like, okay, I'm non-binary, so I need to look a certain way. How do I dress non-binary? How do I express that? Because that isn't my authentic self. That's me trying to fit into something that may not fit me. And if it doesn't fit me, I can throw it out and try a new label tomorrow until I find the one that fits. Or like I said before, some folks just don't do labels at all, and that's absolutely okay. You can have 100 labels, you can have none. It's up to you.
Mm-hmm. I think you just brought up something that's important and subtly important of style and gender expression. And I think that there's a lot of myths out there about these topics that we're covering. One being that all non-binary folk look androgynous or just kind of dress androgynously, which, just simply is not true.
Exactly. Like, there are days when I leave the house wearing, a summer dress, which folks would consider, a woman's item of clothing. But believe me, it has pockets because we all want pockets, no matter what our gender identity is. Also, the other day, I witnessed this beautiful video of a non-binary person who was coming out who had a large, thick beard, which a lot of folks would say, oh, well, a beard, men have beards. Well, this non-binary person has a beard, and they're okay with that. That's what they like. It looks different on everyone. And just like when, sometimes people will say like, oh, well, if you wear a dress, that means you want to be a woman, right?
Right. Or wrong, but right. I've heard of this stereotype.
Right. And clothing is just, that's gender expression, right? That's where gender expression lives, is, a lot of time in our clothing, in our hairstyle, in our, whether or not we wear makeup or get piercings or tattoos. But clothing doesn't have gender. Honestly, it's just, that's just the way it's marketed to us. It's the way it's sold in stores. There's, the men's section, the women's section, but that's just labels, again, that we can choose to follow or not.
Yeah, I'm female identifying and cisgender, and my sex assigned at birth was female, and I definitely wear boys' clothes sometimes. Like I said in the beginning, there's not a lot of rules here, and allowing ourselves to explore our gender identities, to explore our sexualities, even if we're not 100% certain of what that identity even is important. It's an important part of the human experience, and we all deserve to explore our own sexualities and our own genders. It's a right.
Absolutely.
It's a human right.
Right. And going back again to kind of that idea that an individual knows themselves better than anyone else, and trusting them is that, sometimes you might see someone who identifies as a woman but is wearing men's clothing, and they may be expressing themselves in a more masculine way for safety or because it's, a uniform for work. We don't know why people wear the clothing that they wear, and I would love to live in a world where we wear whatever makes us feel most comfortable, most alive, most ourselves. Sometimes folks have to dress a certain way in order to keep themselves safe and in order to, keep their job. Things like that. You never know what's going on in someone's head. And I think that it's okay to ask in a safe way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of resources if y'all listening are curious or want to explore these topics further. Because we're based in the Berkshires, these resources are all local. So we're a part of the Elizabeth Freeman Center, and we have a phone number and a website. Should I say these, or should I? The phone number that you can call if you want to get a hold of us is 413-499-2425. We also have a hotline, a 24-hour hotline. So if you're feeling like these issues are kind of creating a lot of stress in your life, feel free to call any time of day. That number is 866-401-2425. There's also Tapestry Health, which is a great place to get access to healthcare. So that's 413-443-2844. And then there's the Breen Center, the Railroad Street Youth Project, and the Family Resource Center, which is 18 Degrees. 18 Degrees we work really closely with, and we love them. The phone number there is 413-448-8281. And there's also some further readings. You put these in here. What are these further readings?
So Planned Parenthood has some great learning. So Planned Parenthood has put together some great pages on their website that talk about different gender identity, but also like topics of consent and other, healthy relationship topics on their website that are very accessible. And I found honestly, like, simply put in plain terms. So that's www.plannedparenthood.org/learn/gender-identity. You can also just go to the main website and look up gender identity, and that page will come up. There's also Teen Vogue is a great magazine for both teens and adults if you want to learn more about sexuality, gender identity. Again, they do a lot on consent and healthy relationships. Teen Vogue is www.teenvogue.com. If you go on Teen Vogue, there's a great article called 9 Things People Get Wrong About Being Non-Binary that I found to be really helpful while exploring the topic of gender identity. But just a quick Google search on, what is gender identity, transgender, will get you loads of interesting articles and websites. Just look for those .orgs and make sure you're trusting your source. Mm-hmm. It's always important because there's also a lot of misinformation out there.
But just know whether or not you're curious for yourself about these different terms that we're using and these different identities that we're exploring here, or if you're curious for somebody else, or if you're just curious about the topic. There's people who would love to have these conversations with you, and they're right here in your community. And there's people who would love to support you through your process exploring sexuality and gender.
Oh, and I'd also like to recommend, if you're looking for further sources, talk to your local librarians. The library is a judgment-free zone where you can get free resources. They often have free internet. Check in with them. Many libraries have a young adult librarian who, I promise you, because I used to do that job myself, I promise you they have a list of books and resources on these topics, and they would love to help you find what you're looking for.
And if you want to get a hold of us, you can find us on Instagram at Berkshire _ is that an underscore?
Yes.
at Berkshire _ prevention. And I know Carly and I would love to talk with anyone about all things gender and identity.
Absolutely. We also have an email address if you have any further questions and you want to connect with us. It's berkshireprevention@gmail.com. Feel free to send your questions there and we will get back to you
promptly.
promptly.
Have a good day, y'all.
Bye.